This is Film Masters, and on this episode, we're making the Death Star laser. It's gonna look like this.
Fire! That blast came from the Death Star.
Down below in the comment section is a downloadable pack which contains the Death Star as well as the After Effects project. So make sure you download it and let's jump into the tutorial. So first of all, let's go up to composition, new composition. I'm going to call this Death Star. I'm using 1920 by 1080 at 24 frames a second. I'm just going to change the duration down here to 10 seconds. I'm going to resize the project window here. I'm just going to make it to fit up to 100%. I'm going to double click on the project panel and import the Death Star PSD file. I'm going to make sure the import kind is composition and the layers as editable layers styles. I'm going to delete the composition here in the project panel. That way we've just got the folder with the PSD file in it. I'm going to grab that and drop that down onto our timeline. Now that we have the Death Star onto the composition window, we're going to resize it, press S and resize it, scale it, move it around, put it wherever you'd like, ready to begin the effect. Next thing we're going to do is duplicate the layer. So select it, Control D and duplicate. As you can see, there's now two versions and there's a reason for this. Now let's select the top layer and I'm going to zoom in. So press Z on the keyboard and zoom in to where the lasers are going. I'll then select the Ellipse mask tool. I'm going to adjust it and move it into position so that it covers around where the disc is on the Death Star. That's just simply a matter of grabbing the corners and moving them into position like so. I'm going to hide the bottom layer now just so we can see what we've done. So what we've pretty much done is cut out the top layer where the disc is. Now press MM on your keyboard and that will bring up all your mask properties, and I'm going to adjust the feather, mask feather to 5. And this is so the disc can blend in when we do some color correction. So let's do that now. Let's go up to Effect, Color Correction, and we're going to go to Curves. We're going to change the channel in the curves now. Let's go select green and let's just make a bit of an S. And this is going to bump up the disc, so that way we've got a green gradient, so therefore it looks like the lasers are above it. Next thing, let's go to Effect, select Stylize, and then Glow. And this is going to give our disc that nice glow down the bottom. And we can make some adjustments here. Let's change the glow radius to 1 and glow intensity to 1. Now, as you can see, when I start to move around the glow threshold, I start to get a nice glow effect on the disc. Now, we're going to animate that a little bit later on, but let's just drop it down to around 77% for now. I've just changed the project window back to fit to 100%, and I'm just going to hide that top layer. So let's now go up to Layer, New, and Solid. I'm going to call this Stars, and I'm going to make sure it's pure white. Select OK and make comp size. And now we're going to make some stars. So let's go to Effects and I'm going to go down to Simulation and CC Starburst. Now, if I play the stars, as you can see, they're moving and it doesn't look realistic. So we're going to make some adjustments, but let's first of all move the stars below all the other layers. So it's behind the Death Star. And we're going to go up to Scatter and we're going to adjust it outwards until there's only a few stars there. 300 will do nicely. And now we're going to adjust the speed down to 0 and that will stop the stars. So if you hit the space bar, you'll see nothing moves, and that's exactly what we are after. Now we're going to change our elements into 3D elements so we can cast some light on it. So let's just go down to Toggle and I'm going to select over the two Death Star layers, the 3D object, and then I'm going to go up to Layer, New, Light, and I'm just going to call it Light and leave everything else as it is and select OK. Now what I want you to do is to play around with the spotlight and light your scene. So obviously you can move the direction, you can move it in and out, left to right, and just light the scene the way that you like it. So one thing you need to remember is you must make the elements 3D, otherwise the light will not affect them. Now that we've got all of our scenes ready to go, now it's the time to start animating and start making some lasers. So let's go to New, Solid, let's make sure it's pure white. I'm going to call this Spotlight. and make sure it's all make comp size and select OK. Now we're going to go up to masks and select the eclipse mask once again, and I'm just going to make a very small circle. Now once I've done that, I'm going to zoom in. So press Z and zoom in to the workspace, and then I'm going to resize the mask. So what I'll do is press S and zoom it down. Now one thing you'll notice is it's starting to disappear from the original location, and that's because of where the anchor point is. So we're going to change the anchor point, but what we'll do is we're just going to move it into location first of all, and then we're going to duplicate it. So select the layer, Control D to duplicate, and I'm going to go up to layer, new solid, and we're going to make a pure black solid now. Select OK. Now we're going to move the black solid below the other two solids that we created before. So now we're going to select the very first white layer, press MM, and adjust the feather to 30. Once we've done that, we're going to select the two white layers and the black layer. And I do this by using the control button. And then I'm going to go to layer, pre-compose. So the next thing that we're going to do is I'm going to call this stars once again, and make sure that we've got move all attributes to new composition, and then select OK. Now this is going to be the base of the laser. So let's go up to effect, and we're going to go color correction, and we're going to select curves, and I'm going to select green, and I'm going to make some adjustments here. Really pump it up so we can see some green pop. I'm just going to zoom in now, press Z obviously on the keyboard to zoom in. I'm going to go and apply more green to it. So let's go to effect and color correction and color balance. Now I'm going to push the shadow green up to 100%, the mid-tone green down to -100, and highlight green up to 100. Then we're going to put a tick in the box where it says preserve luminosity. Now we're done with this one, so I'm just going to move the anchor point now. So press A, and what we're going to do is just make some adjustments here and bring it so that the element goes right in the center. Now the reason for that is with an anchor point, if I press R for rotation and start spinning it, so with the spotlight selected, I'm going to go down and change the mode to screen, and then I'm going to move it into position. So let's do that. And we need 8 of these. Let's resize it first. Press S and scale it down. And then we're going to start doing some animation. So I'm going to move it into position. Let's start the first one up here, top left. And I'm going to bring it to the beginning, select opacity, set a keyframe, bring it to 0. And then I'm going to move it 4 frames. So pressing page down 4 times and then bumping it back up to 100. So what we get is a light or the laser where it turns on. So now we've done that, we're going to duplicate the layer 8 times. So first of all, select the layer, press Control D, and that will duplicate it. And now I'm going to move it in position. So I'm just going to move down the bottom, the opposite side. And I'm going to zoom in on the timeline now. And I'm going to open up the very first spotlight opacity. And we're going to make, there it is, perfect. So what we're going to do is make sure that it starts off. When the first one ends, we're going to go straight to the end, scrub it, Control D to duplicate it again. And this is going to assist us. So we're going to move it into position, the next one. And then that spotlight that we've just duplicated, we're going to move that 4 frames back like so with the slider. Now I'm pressing the T button for the opacity so I can see where the keyframes are so I can line up the animation. Move 4 frames again, duplicate this layer. And once we've duplicated that, I'm going to move that opposite side. And I'm going to continue the process all the way through. So as you can see on the timeline, it looks like steps going up, 4 frames in between. And we'll have 8 of these because there's 8 going into 1. Excellent. So I'm going to zoom out. Now that's done. So I'm going to go all the way back. So press home on the keyboard and let's play it. And that's what we're going to have first of all. So this is the very first part of the laser. Next part is we're going to start putting the center laser in. So let's just duplicate one of those layers, put it right in the center. Then we're going to press S and scale it up and move it into center. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go up and make the lasers now. So let's go to new solid I'm going to make sure that this one is pure white. So let's change that. And we're going to call this one laser. And make sure it's the comp size and then select OK. And the next thing we're going to do is grab the mask tool and we're going to make the laser. Now we're going to make a 3-point mask. So we're just going to make a triangle and then we're going to adjust it. So once we've done that, let's zoom in. And what we want is the laser to go to a point. So we're going to drag one corner down like so. Just move it in. And we're going to move the first one into position. So I'm going to grab the ends and just line it up with the first laser spotlight. And it's going to move it to roughly around this location. Now, once we've done that, we're going to jump out and just have a look at what it looks like. So yeah, it's going to be shoot off, probably off screen in an angle. I don't like that. So let's just move the position. So you've got to remember that the middle point is where the laser is going to come out of, and it's going to obviously be grouped in with all the other 8 lasers, which I'm assuming are used for direction. So let's grab the first layer and press Control D to duplicate it. So once we've done that, generally we're going to put a feather on it, but before we do that, we're going to go up and we're going to select a new layer, and we're going to select the solid and make it pure black. Select OK, make comp size, select OK, drag that below the other 2 white laser solids. So I'm just going to zoom in and we're going to feather it out. Now the feather we're going to be looking at is 10. So let's change it to 10 and that will give us a nice feather look. Close that down, select all 3 solids. Let's go up now to layer, pre-compose, and make sure it's move all attributions into a new composition. And I'm just going to call this laser, select OK. And once we've done that, we'll make a, well, that's pre-compose the layers together. So now we're going to just change the screen mode to screen. And the next move is go up to Effect, Color Correction, and Curves. Now again, we're going to select the green RGB, or the green channel, and we're going to make adjustments to that. So what we're going to do, I'm just going to grab the first curve and just pull it up and adjust it, give it a bit of an S bend, as you can see here. And once we've done that, we're going to go up to Effect, I'm going to go Color Correct, and we're going to go Color Balance. Going to change the shadow to 100 and midtones to -100 and highlights to 100. Now we're going to move the anchor point into position now. So let's press A on that layer. Let's just line it up so that the end is on the anchor point. Now the reason we do that, obviously, as you're aware, because when we start using the rotation, it will rotate around that axis of the anchor point, like so. And that's what we want. This is going to make it a little bit easier when we're adjusting our laser. So let's put that in position. Now, once we've put it in position, the next thing we're going to do with this laser is we're going to animate it, and it'll make it a lot easier for when we start doing all the other animations. So let's zoom in onto the timeline. So I'm going to zoom in so we can have a look at all the layers. So just zoom down, zoom in. You can see the steps that we've created with the 4 frames. Zoom up. And the goal here is going to be line the very first laser with the very first spotlight when it comes on. So what we're doing is lining up that to the first position. So we're going to be moving the laser now up to the actual first spotlight. So let's do that. Once we've done that, we'll just adjust it into position where it was prior, into that direction. And once we've done that, we're going to move 4 frames, as you can see. And now we're going to duplicate, so Control D, that layer. And we're going to move that to the next one. So the next point, move that 4 frames, drag it down. Now this is where it gets interesting. So we're going to be lining it up now so the lasers connect to each other. Now to do that, we're going to have to resize. So there's 2 ways of doing it. First way, I'm just going to zoom out and have a look at the end of that element. And I'm going to drag that down, as you can see. So that's one way of dragging it down and resizing the image. So I just want it so it touches. Doesn't have to be 100% perfect because we're going to be putting another element on top of that at the end. Rotate it with the R for rotation. And we're going to keep on carrying on throughout this video doing the same thing. So again, we're going to move 4 frames. Then we're going to duplicate. And then we're going to move the laser onto the point or the spotlight that turns on. Now, one thing we need to do, as you can see, the laser is actually going over top of one of these spotlights. So I'm going to make a light alteration. Just going to have to resize again, as you can see. So I'm just going to quickly drag it down, zoom back in. Perfect. And we're going to move it again. So duplicate that layer, move it 4 frames forward, and then move it into position like so. And we're just going to keep on carrying on and doing the rest of them. So when you think about it, the Death Star itself isn't that complex to create. In fact, all you're simply doing is making lasers and different shapes of them and animating them and moving them into position. Now, for reference for this, I checked out Return of the Jedi, the end battle sequence, pretty much similar, or actually from the sequence in which you see Lando in the Millennium Falcon. Now, I used the reference to that. I know there's different versions based on the original trilogy, the re-release of the Star Wars trilogies and so forth. I'm basing it on the original one. So the original one was fairly basic. However, when they remastered it and George Lucas obviously did more effects for the laser, you'll see that he's also included, or his visual effects department, ILM, also included what appears to be some sort of pulse that generates from the dish through the lasers themselves. Now, if you wanted to do that, by all means, do it. Again, these effects, even though this is based on the Death Star laser, obviously you can change the color of it. You could be doing a short film or making something else, and you have an idea for a product or a project, and you want to put lasers in it, then this tutorial will assist you in making them. So now that I've finished off the laser, we're going to grab the very first spotlight and duplicate it and bring it up to the very tip, because what happens is when all the lasers converse together, it seems to build up what appears to be a bright circle at the point. And that, I'm assuming, is assisting in directing the laser. So once we do that, we're going to animate that as well, as you can see. So by animating it, we're going to start it off from the very beginning when the lasers start to the very end. But we're going to do the large laser now. So again, we're going to create the laser from a solid. Now, I won't go through this process. We've done this many times already in this tutorial. But there is going to be one change to this. So we're just going to move it into position. I've already adjusted it and put the anchor point in. So we're going to go through and I'm going to give it the tinge and the color like we have prior. But one extra thing we're going to do is we're going to give it a different look. So let's go to Effect, select Distort, and we're going to go to Turbulent Displacement. So let's select that. I'm going to make some adjustments to this. So first of all, let's bring down the size and scale to 2. And as you can see, it's got a wavy appearance to it. So it looks like all the energy of the lasers are all combined in the main laser. Now, if you're wanting to animate that, you can do that as well. Just check out the Kylo Ren lightsaber tutorial. I'll show you how to give it that wavy look and animate it if you'd like, but we're not going to animate it in this one. We're just going to give it that appearance. So with the main laser, we're going to just move that into position on the timeline. So we want that to activate when all the lasers come together at one point, and then it fires. So we're going to move the slider to here on the timeline. Obviously, you need to make adjustments yourself to do that. So once all the lasers come together, as soon as that point hits, that's where the start point of your main laser is going to be. And I'm just going to scale it down. Now, as you can see, I've unlocked the scales. Now, as I was saying before, you can change the layers and the scaling of it. And I'm going to animate that out. Like so. Now I've only moved a couple of frames. I'm looking at 4 frames forward. So what happens, all the lasers can come together and then fires, like we can see here. Now, the last thing that we need to do is we're going to animate the dish. So if you remember, at the very beginning of this tutorial, we set up this layer, which was the lighting of all the lasers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go straight to the beginning of when the lasers start to come out. As you can see, we're going to scrub to that position. And then I'm going to open up T for transparency. And we're going to animate the transparency of this layer. So select the stopwatch, bring it down to 0. And I'm going to bring it all the way up to all the lasers come together. And once they do that, that is going to be our endpoint. So once we've got to that location, I'm going to then increase it to 100%. What this means is as the lasers come together and get brighter, so does the dish. So the next thing we're going to do is going to zoom in and we're going to have a look at the glow intensity on the disc. So I've set a keyframe on that and I've made the slider go all the way to the very end and I'm going to increase it. This is just a subtle change, but it's going to sell the shot. So just increase it to 22. As you can see, the glow radius as well affects the dish. So we're going to animate that as well. So let's bring it about halfway. Set a keyframe for that one. All the way back to the end again when it fires. And I'm going to bump up the glow radius to about 11, like so. Now again, you can adjust this to whatever you feel happy with for your project. And that's it. That is the Death Star laser all done. Now, if you want to become a Film Master subby, it's pretty simple. All you have to do is subscribe to the channel, like us on Facebook and or on Twitter. And until next time, don't just film it, master it.